Seminole fans, it is finally game week. Nole insiders Lane Hurt and Tim Lenefeld with you. Head coach Jimbo Fisher had his first press conference of the season. He had the preseason press conference, but now we're finally in the season. Naturally, a lot of talk about DeAndre Francois. He's the starter. Worst kept secret in camp, Coach Fisher said on Saturday. What were your impressions on what Coach Fisher talked about today?
It was interesting. You mentioned DeAndre Francois, obviously a lot of questions about him. And what was kind of a fun little detour, if you will, was Coach Fisher started off talking about DeAndre Francois and all the things that he had done to sort of take control of the starting quarterback job. But then it kind of went around into a bit of I guess, sort of a manifesto, Jimbo Fisher's thoughts on quarterbacks and how he likes to coach them and what they should be. And he talked about how hard he is on them in practice and how he feels like he has to be that way because he's trying to quote him, raise their stress level. He said, I don't know how to simulate a football game without getting onto a quarterback in practice, and I want them to make mistakes and get flustered in practice rather than in the games. And then he went on to talk about the term game manager. A lot of times you use the term game manager as sort of a veiled insult at a quarterback. He said, well, no. All great quarterbacks have to be a game manager. He mentioned Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So do you think those guys don't manage the game? So, he sort of just gave a whole list of his thoughts and rationale on quarterbacks and what he likes to see from them and how he likes to coach them. And then to bring that all around, bring it back to DeAndre Francois, talk about his evolution. Said when he saw him for the first time, you knew that the talent was there. You knew he could make the throws. Obviously, he can run as well. But seeing him evolve into a locker room leader, somebody that the guys can look up to in the huddle, has been probably the biggest aspect of his development so far, and it's why he feels comfortable going into this game against Ole Miss with DeAndre Francois under center.
No question, Fisher. He hinted at the fact that players were very confident in Francois, like what they saw from him, and he looks like he's the real deal, and we'll find out on Monday night if he really is. All this talk about quarterback play. Mm-hmm. One of the big things about camp was what's going to happen with special teams.
Right.
Well, Coach Fisher said that Ricky Aguayo will handle field goals. Logan Tyler will handle punting and kickoffs for now. Very interesting subplot to how successful this Florida State season can be.
Yeah, it will be, and somebody mentioned it's really the first time in the Fisher era that he's had position battles at the kicking spots. Jimbo mentioned Dustin Hopkins and Roberto Aguayo in 2012, but Dustin was a senior and an All-American, and Roberto was a freshman, so it might have been somewhat of a competition, but Dustin was the heavy favorite in that one always. But yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think it's the first time that I can remember that they'll use somebody different for field goals and kickoffs. But, paying attention in camp, especially over the last week or so, you can kind of get the sense that maybe that's where they were headed. We've seen Ricky Aguayo and Logan Tyler take their field goal reps in practice. They always do that at the start of practice. And then a little bit of the scrimmage as well. We've seen them work on kickoffs and field goals. And you can see the big thing with Logan Tyler is just his distance. He's a left-footed kicker. Don't see too many of those. And gosh, he just really booms the ball. Really impressive as a punter. If you were at the open practice a few weeks ago, you saw what Logan Tyler could do as a punter. And I think that translates over to kicking. I think in Jimbo Fisher's, what it came down to is Ricky Aguayo's consistency and his accuracy with field goals. He might not be able to kick it quite as far as Logan Tyler, but he's a little more consistent at actually getting it through the uprights. So not a bad way to handle that and have a split between those two guys.
Yeah, Coach Fisher talks a lot about hidden yardage in the kicking game, even with a missed field goal, giving a team good field position. We're going to see that play out live very early on this season.
And the other thing somebody did mention, we asked, could there be a situation where if it was a longer field goal, might you go to Logan Tyler instead of Ricky if you thought Logan would give you a better chance to make it? And Jimbo said, yeah, we'll see. I don't know that there's necessarily plans for that, but if that were to arise, it's something they would consider.
Yeah, all of camp, Florida State this, Florida State that. How are the defensive ends looking? The tackles, offensive line. Quarterbacks, just a couple of times people might have asked, well, game week. We can finally talk about someone else.
Yeah.
Ole Miss coming up. Really good team that Florida State's going to face in this opening neutral site game.
Yeah, the Ole Miss did lose a lot off of last year's team. Had plenty of guys drafted, but they're still really talented. They've recruited just about as well as anybody in the country. Jimbo Fisher mentioned two guys by name. One, of course, is the quarterback Chad Kelly. Led the SEC in passing a year ago. He'll be a tough test for Florida State's defense. As good as we expect that Florida State defense to be there, it's going to be a reworked secondary, some new faces at linebacker and some new faces on the defensive line. So it's going to be a tough test for those guys early on. Jimbo said that it could be the toughest passing game that they see this year, certainly among the best between the quarterback and some of the weapons that he has at his disposal. And then on the other side, Jimbo mentioned Marcus Haynes, the All-American pass rusher at Ole Miss, that he's a tough guy to block. And it's kind of a similar situation. You're going to have Probably some new faces on the offensive line, at least at right tackle. We're still not sure on the status of Alec Eberle. He's been dealing with the concussion-like symptoms. Jimbo said that he thinks he should be available, but they can't commit to it yet. So you could have a new right tackle, a new center, going up against one of the best pass rushers in the country. It's going to be a tough test. The good news is in DeMarcus Walker and Josh Sweat, and then also we've seen this fall the emergence of Brian Burns. I think Florida State feels like they've been able to simulate elite pass rushers pretty well in practice, so they feel like they're pretty prepared for that.
There you have it, Seminole fans. We'll have a lot more talk on Ole Miss as the week goes, but the time for talk is nearly over. A week away as Florida State takes on Ole Miss next Monday night. Nole Insiders will have plenty more. Tim and I are going to go live before Tuesday's practice tomorrow, probably around 3:30, so be on the lookout for that. We'll try to answer a couple of questions as we talk about Ole Miss and the Seminoles a little bit more. But for now, we're going to wrap things up. Make sure you check out more of Tim's press conference observations on the website later on this afternoon. But for Tim Lenefelt, I'm Lane Hurt. We'll try to give Tim his mic back next time. We'll see you next time. Go Noles.